And we're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Petersen here, former presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Welcome to the Freedom Report podcast. If you're watching this live on YouTube, just so you know, I am watching your comments. If you have a question or a comment during the stream, you can drop your question right in the live stream, and I will be monitoring the chat. Also, if you're watching us on Facebook right now, just so you know, this is actually not live. We do our live streams over on YouTube now, and then we upload it later to Facebook. So if you want to catch these when they happen, which right now our schedule is every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, on weekend nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, or if you're on the East Coast, which is apparently the center of the universe, everybody tells me, that would be 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Catch us Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday on YouTube at youtube.com/AuggieP. That's me, AUGGYP. It's my nickname, youtube.com/AuggieP. And subscribe to our YouTube channel so that way you can get an alert whenever we go live, which is Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So don't tax me, bro. Tonight is the topic that all libertarians must agree on. Now, if you bring up Rand Paul and you bring up Ron Paul at a libertarian meeting and you talk about Ron Paul, it's like everybody's singing Kumbaya around the corner. And if you talk about Rand Paul, then everybody starts throwing rocks, right? Certain things are controversial in libertarian circles. But talking about taxes in libertarian circles and conservative circles is the one time that we all sit down and just Kumbaya and shake hands and we all agree. Most people in the libertarian circle might argue that taxation is theft. And certainly here at the Freedom Report podcast, we do agree. And that's why we have these great products where you can make taxation theft again. Of course, it was always theft. We know that. So, but it doesn't matter because it's a good slogan. It's a good jingle. And I cannot tell you how many times I've worn this hat out in public and got the double take from somebody, and then they see me and they're like, "Is that a Trump hat?" And they're like, "Oh, it's not a Trump hat." And they're like, "Oh, what's that all about?" And then she's like, "Oh, can I get your number?" And I'm just kind of like, "Oh my gosh." So it works. It works. Ask my friends. Yeah, you can get these cool products at threadsofliberty.com. It's the AP collection. AP, that's me, Augie P. And you can find this really cool shirt there as well. So what do we all agree on? Taxation is bad. There was a really great experience moment in a presidential debate when Ron Paul was asked, Congressman Paul, 50% of the people in this country don't pay taxes. What do you think about that? And he goes, well, we're halfway there. And, that's kind of how I feel about that too. But, raising taxes is the kind of thing that seems to make sense from an economic perspective if you have a baseline, if you have a surface level understanding of economics. You think, oh, okay, well, 1 + 1 = 1 or 2. If we increase taxes, we'll get more revenue. Well, that's not actually the case. And I'm going to be taking a look at 2 states that are having a budget crisis right now, talk a little bit about what they're doing in order to tighten their belts and the problems with raising taxes. The big story right now is what's happening to California's budget. Oh, and I've got a really cool Milton Friedman clip for you guys too. I know you love Uncle Milty, so I've got a really cool video to play for you later in the show as well. But this article comes from the Los Angeles Times, and it's called "What's Hurting California's Budget? The Rich Aren't Getting Richer as Fast as They Used to." You know how liberals and social democrats are always complaining, oh, the rich are getting rich faster, it's too bad, it's too much inequality. Well, in California, that's no longer the case. The rich aren't getting richer as fast as they used to. There's a slowdown. And this comes from, again, the LA Times by Natalie Kitroff and Paresh Dave, who write that income growth is slowing for the highest earning Californians. And that's the single biggest driver of the $1.6 billion budget deficit projected on a $179.5 billion overall budget by Governor Jerry Brown last Tuesday. And once again, it's raising the question of whether California has grown too reliant on taxing rich people with often wildly fluctuating incomes. This is the LA Times writing this, that whether or not California has grown too reliant on taxing rich people. You think? Quote, "We are lining ourselves up for a massive budgetary crisis. It's a function of when and not if," said Chris Thornburg, co-founder of Beacon Economics, an LA brand-based consulting firm. Quote, "It's hard to feel bad for someone whose income goes from $2 million to $1 million a year, but the reality is that it's going to have a tremendous impact on our budget." Why can you not feel bad about somebody who loses half of their income? People have this, I think social democrats have this really strange idea that if you make $2 million a year, that you get $2 million. You do realize that you get taxed at an enormous rate when you make that kind of money. Also, why does the millionaire tax start at $250,000 a year? I'll never understand that. But to me, it should be plainly obvious. When you make that much money, you've got to spend a lot of that money. Sometimes my team, my staff, the people who work with me on the business end of what I do right here, we look at the numbers of the gross revenue of what we earn from things like live streams and podcasts and editorials and merchandise and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, even after taxes, it costs a lot, actually. My server bills just to run the website so that you guys can get news for free, it costs around $1,000 a month, and that really adds up. It's very hard to make a living as a business owner, and I know that for a fact. And remember, business owners are the job creators of this economy. So yeah, we should feel bad for somebody who goes from $2 million a year to $1 million a year, because they're losing a lot of potential and a lot of the money that they use to make money. You have to spend money to make money. Right? You don't just get $2 million, right? If you make $2 million net, that's a different story, but you're still paying taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, all sorts of other taxes that aren't included in this. But the problem with California is that they have been relying on taxing the rich, hoping that their budgets were going to make up for it. But the problem is that the rich aren't getting richer as fast as they used to. There's been a slowdown in income increases for the rich in California. And so that's the problem, is that they've been parasitic on the productive class in that state, and now they're suffering, and now they're going to have to figure out what to do. Well, you know what they're going to do. They're going to try and get it somewhere else, but we'll talk about it. The top 10% of earners, this is California, who made an average of $404,000 in 2014, paid 79% of all personal income tax revenue that year, up from 70% 2 decades ago. So think about that. All personal income tax revenue in the year 2014 in California was paid by 10% of earners. Right? This is just called soaking. They call it soaking the rich. And a rising share of California's tax revenue comes from these top 10% of incomes. I've got a little graphic over here I can show you guys that you guys can see what we're looking at right here. Let me pop this over so you guys can see. Take a look at this chart right here, right? So from 1995 to 2014 in Los Angeles, this is from the LA Times here, and the source is the Franchise Tax Board. Again, this is the LA Times over here, so you don't cry fake news. This isn't a conservative source, this is a liberal source, right? So look at that. It's gone from 70% to 79%. So California is not going to be able to sustain the type of economic growth that they need in order to continue to operate. The government budget won't be able to continue to operate. And we're having the same kind of a crisis here in the state of Missouri, which I'll get to here in just a few minutes. California is so dependent on high earners to fill state coffers, partly because of Proposition 30. This is a measure that was approved in 2012 that temporarily, quote unquote, raised taxes on people earning more than $250,000 a year. See, so that's the thing, is they call you pay a millionaire's tax as soon as you start making $250,000 a year. Now those rates were supposed to begin phasing out in 2018, like the Patriot Act was supposed to phase out, right? But on November 8th, voters elected to prolong them by approving Proposition 55, which extends higher taxes through 2030. Now you know why people want to get out of the state. Those propositions have increased the dependence of the state on a volatile tax base, said Jerry Nicholsberg, an economist at UCLA. Supporters of continuing to tax the wealthy at high levels, aka socialists and economic illiterates, people earning more than $263,000 in 2015 paid a top state income tax rate of 10.3%, say it's crucial to keep state money flowing to public services. Oh, of course you do. Although the top 10% may see their income fluctuate from year to year, they point out, rich people have steadily increased their earnings for decades. Define rich, Democrats. Quote, if not this revenue source, then which? Let's put a tax on socialism, said Jonathan Kaplan, a policy analyst at the California Budget Center. This was the only game in town, and we believe those who have more resources in the state should carry a bigger burden than those who have less. Gosh, the economic literacy is strong with these ones. Personal income tax will make up 69% of total revenue in the state next fiscal year, meaning that the richest people in the state will supply more than half of its revenue. Alternative sources of revenue have their own problems. Some Excuse me. That's what happens when you're live. Edit the live stream. Somebody call Thomas Fiedler. We got to edit that live stream. Some lawmakers and economists have proposed raising property taxes, of course, especially on commercial real estate. Yeah, tax the businessman because they aren't going to pass that down onto the consumer. But that would require marshaling the legislature and the voting public to overturn Proposition 13's limits on property reassessments. Well, good for you, California voters. You've placed some restrictions on your state government on their ability to tax you. They've got to ask your permission, and that's how it ought to be. Another option is a tax on services other than rent, utilities, and health care. Senator Bob Hertzberg has introduced 2 bills to apply such a tax, and both died last year. Rest in peace. The state doesn't have data on how much personal income from the highest earners declined last year, but it does track income from sources other than salaries, which captures the money that the highest earners get when they, for example, sell stocks or cash, or they cash in on options to buy shares. That type of income dropped 4% in 2016 compared with 2015. It's not growing as fast as expected, said Irina Asmunsen, chief economist at the State Department of Finance. Yes, they're freaking out over there. The slowdown in those windfall earnings is the central factor behind the projected deficit next fiscal year. Although slower wage growth in sectors that pay the highest salaries will also dent the budget, Asmunsen said. Industries that typically offer fat paychecks, finance, professional services, and information, which includes the movie business, which gets incredible tax breaks, by the way, and some technology firms will increase their wages about 1 percentage point less than expected in 2017, the Department of Finance projects. Personal income overall will grow more slowly in coming years, the department says. It estimates that taxable personal income went up 6.3% in 2015, and then it's going to slow to a 4.4% uptick by 2020. So they're lowering the expectations of how much taxable income they're going to get. They had thought that they were going to be getting around 6.3%. Now they're thinking they're going to get about 4.4%. They were hoping that was going to increase. But this is a sluggish market for new technology stocks, and that's probably what's tamping down the incomes of the richest Californians at the moment. Right now, only 21 tech companies last year took the plunge to sell stocks for the first time. Those IPOs usually will generate a really large payout to employees and big capital gains taxes for the state, because as soon as you start selling off stocks, not only do you have to pay all sorts of taxes on your income, but you're paying capital gains taxes, you're paying corporate taxes. I mean, you're absolutely soaking the rich, and at some point in time, it's just like what Margaret Thatcher said. The problem with socialism is that sooner or later, you run out of other people's money. Existing tech stocks, such as those of Facebook and Santa Clara, California-based NVIDIA, a maker of electronic chips, they make like the video cards, their share price gained 227% last year. Those held up. But they could face challenges this year, which influences the decision by newer companies to go public and could be contributing to the state's scaled-back outlook. So when other tech companies are very bullish, then it encourages other companies to go IPO, and it encourages them to get into the marketplace, increasing market value and increasing the tax base, right? So when people like Facebook or NVIDIA are looking at are selling off their stocks in their IPO, which we can see because, again, it's public, then you know that other companies are going to be bearish on the market, which is not a good thing. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley, the source of so much of the state's wealth, is tightening its belt in other ways. After about 3 years of booming investment, venture capital flowing to young companies tumbled 12% last year to $69 billion from a peak of near $80 billion last year. Even companies that raised financing said they were holding large chunks in the bank as a hedge against more difficult fundraising conditions. And this has a direct impact on me. Facebook has warned that the number of ads it can show users might max out this year, flattening sales growth. That's not good for them. Not good for me too. In December, Google parent company Alphabet eschewed its usual holiday bonus of free gadgets and their giveaways. And this is why Google is really struggling this year. It's a sign of Google struggling, showing that they're trying to exercise more spending discipline. These are kind of the signs that you see, right? So when Facebook can no longer show more ads to you because your timeline or your news feed is getting clogged, then they can't sell any more ads to advertisers, which means that their market cap is probably topped out. So if you had bought Facebook stock before, then you did well. But at the moment, it may not be a good time to purchase Facebook stock simply because the news feeds are also cluttered. Unless Facebook comes up with some new technology, then you may not see an increase. You know what? But I will give you a little stock tip here, just based on what I know of the industry. And I'm not only am I a customer of Facebook, but I'm also a sponsor, an advertiser. And I'm also a benefactor of their new audience network, right? So they have a new network that competes with Google. But one of the things that Facebook is getting ready to do is to start monetizing their videos. Before, right, if you wanted to, the reason why you're watching this right now live on YouTube is because YouTube actually monetizes their videos. They have an advertising network that automatically plugs into YouTube videos. So, for example, if you're watching me on YouTube right now and I click this button, play ad, boom. Some of you can't hear me right now. Some of you are watching an advertisement. Some of you are not. But this is the option that YouTube gives to me that Facebook doesn't. So think about it like this. If Facebook can't sell any more display advertisements, a display is what you would see on the screen, and they are going to get into video advertising, then that could be the driver of their growth, which would indicate a stronger stock down the line. So Facebook, theoretically, I'm not advising you to buy Facebook stock, but I am saying that theoretically, if they do start to monetize their videos, that would increase their base, right? And that means that they would show growth. So this article right here doesn't mention that, but it is a potential opportunity for Facebook that they could increase their market capitalization by selling more ads, just including those into video. Also, we've got slowing iPhone sales weighing in Cupertino, California-based Apple right now. Everybody be buying the Samsungs these days. It's the new hottest thing. I got the new Samsung Edge. These are starting to edge out with the iPhone. More people are using this. California manufactures the iPhone, so they're getting a big shrinking tax base out there in California. And it has a lot to do with the economy. It also has a lot to do with the fact that their entire tax structure is based on soaking the rich. So this goes on. I want to move on to another topic. Before we do, I do want to talk about Missouri and their dire budget hole, just because, obviously it's a big problem in my state where I live. There's some breaking news that the new governor, Eric Greitens, who has no political experience, he's never held elective office before, the new governor, is announcing major budget cuts. This is a big deal, but we have got to do probably about $456 million in cuts, and I think today he announced something like $128 million, so they've got a long way to go. But I want to talk to you about the concept, the morality of taxation and the idea of taxing the rich. So I think that the moral argument that liberals make when it comes to taxing the rich is that they think that the rich are greedy, right? And that this is this concept of this greed economy. And that's why a lot of social democrats don't like libertarians, because they read people like Ayn Rand and who raise up greed as a virtue. But Uncle Milty probably says it best, which is why I really want to show you guys this great video from Milton Friedman, and then we can come back, talk a little bit about what's happening in my home state of Missouri. And then I actually got a really cool story as a bonus story that I want to share with you guys. We've got some time. It's the surprising truth about gun silencers. Not this garbage gun, but guns that can carry silencers. And this is a really cool story. It was from Reason.com, and I thought you guys would enjoy it. But before we talk about Missouri, let's hear what good old Uncle Milty has to say. Have a listen.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear, that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
Well,
I don't even trust you to do that.
Good old Uncle Milty, man. That guy is based Milton Friedman. That's where you get the Chicago School of Economics, very closely related to the Austrian School of Economics, which I am a practitioner and an advocate for myself. Milton Friedman of the Chicago School of Economics. Well done, well done. I love that guy, and he's certainly been a big inspiration for me, and definitely is one of the top libertarian economists in the whole world. All right, so let's talk about what's happening in Missouri. We're facing a $456 million budget crisis here in the state of Missouri. Also, we've got a big right-to-work fight right now. That's going to be a big challenge here because there are a lot of unions here in Missouri, and the idea behind right-to-work legislation is that you should be able to take a job without being forced to be in a union. You know, I actually used to work in the entertainment business directly, and I qualified for the Screen Actors Guild, and they have this law called the Taft-Hartley Law. And what the Taft-Hartley Law does is it doesn't force you to join the union until you've done at least three paid jobs that are union. You can work a union job for, I think it's 3 days, 3 paid days in the entertainment business, but then they force you to join the union. So a lot of people think right-to-work laws are a good idea. I mostly tend to agree, but every time that we have a new law that's implemented in each state, sometimes the language is a little bit different. But most states that I've seen have had an overall good experience, I think, with right-to-work law. But right now, our new governor in Missouri is facing a really difficult budget problem because we are on track to spend $456 million more than we receive. It sounds like what the federal government does. And we've got a new Republican legislature, Republican majority, and they are not in the mood to raise taxes. Go Republicans. Thank you very much. Quote, "We will balance the budget, but we have a difficult task ahead," said Rep. Scott Fitzpatrick, who chairs the House Budget Committee. "There's a lot of uncertainty now," said Senator Dan Brown, a Republican from Rolla. He oversees budget matters in the Senate. Also, we've got slower than anticipated revenue growth, which is going to leave the state nearly $40 million in the red when our current fiscal year ends in June 30. These problems need to be fixed. Now, Greitens is expected to address his shortfall, and he did today. He's going to be making, they said, $146 million in budget cuts, and those cuts are supposed to go to higher education. Says he's not going to cut from K through 12 programs, but he will be cutting from things like busing, some cybersecurity programs that these universities are going to be phased out. Perhaps are going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you got to take from somewhere, and nobody wants to take the cuts. Right? And Greitens said, "You elected me because I'll always tell it like it is, and the more hard choices lie ahead. But as Missourians, I believe we must come together, tighten our belts, be smart and wise with our tax dollars, and work our way out of this hole by bringing more jobs with higher pay to the people of Missouri." And that's absolutely true. But you know what's funny is I read another article the other day here in Missouri, where in St. Louis, some of these new manufacturing plants, like the Ford plant, they have problems finding enough skilled workers to work in the plant. So there's more jobs available than they can fill for these skilled labor. And part of it may have to do with the fact that we have such high taxes here in Missouri. We have a state income tax. We have property taxes too. Some states have no income tax and they have a property tax. Some states have property taxes and they don't have an income tax, or they the other way around, right? And so I think that if you're going to have a property tax in a state, you shouldn't have an income tax. If you're going to have an income tax, you shouldn't have a property tax. And maybe you shouldn't have either. Maybe we should just fund our services, our public services in these states through voluntary means. And another big issue that's coming up right now is toll roads and roads here in Missouri. And there seems to be a little appetite for it, but it would be the kind of thing that would make it so that people who actually drive on roads would be the ones paying it. And of course, you have gas taxes too, which don't help. I mean, we got taxation is theftification here in Missouri. We're getting taxed to the hilt. We have a pretty high sales tax too. That we've also got some other problems, and this is where you really ought to be looking at the budgets, the problems in the budget, because this is what I found in this article. Listen to this. Now, this is from payouts to officer. Let's see. This is lawsuits. Work ahead. Sorry, I should have had that queued up for you guys. But essentially what's happening is that they have been the state of Missouri is having to pay out tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits because of corruption at our state-run prisons, where there have been some sexual harassment lawsuits, and I think the state had to pay out $72 million in sexual harassment lawsuits on behalf of the officers in correctional facilities here in Missouri. And that's just $72 million. It's just money down the drain because of the bad behavior of some of these corrections officers. So that's the kind of thing that libertarians and conservatives really need to take a look at and do some crackdowns, because that behavior, bad behavior by our corrections officers, costs taxpayers money in lawsuits. So yeah, that's the kind of unnecessary theft that we definitely need to be looking at solving. So yeah, this is what I believe. This is an argument that I found. This is the final article that I want to share with you guys. Sometimes these tax things tend to be a little bit boring. It's not as interesting as like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll topics, right? And we're going to get into the sexy topic at the very end, the truth about gun silencers. I want to read that one to you. But someone wrote an article about this topic, about taxing the rich, and they actually proposed the exact same kind of tax proposal that I was making during my presidential campaign. I think it makes a good argument. It's a nice little summary. Can I read it to you guys? Can I? Well, you don't have a choice. This is my show. I do what I want. This came out actually in 2015 at the end of September, 2 years ago, but they were talking about how popular presidential candidate Donald Trump, now our president-elect, talks about his tax policy, and his tax policy at the time was, I think the rich should pay more. He said, oh, Lord, save us. President Obama agreed. He said that the rich should pay their fair share. Although, what is that Walter Williams quote where he said, what is your fair share of what someone else has earned? No, that's Thomas Sowell. Wrong black economist. That's racist. Sorry. President Obama has already raised marginal income tax rates on the wealthy by 10%. He's also raised capital gains taxes by more than 50%. He says this is needed to reduce income inequality and to pay for health insurance, welfare, and food stamps for lowest income earners. And we all saw how that worked out. Donald Trump says that wealthy hedge fund managers don't pay their fair share due to a loophole that allows their income to be taxed at a lower rate. Besides, he contends the financial wizards aren't building buildings, all like he does, right? All they're doing is moving paper around, he says, perhaps not fully understanding the real value of raising billions of dollars for a company like Google or Facebook or even Trump Properties. See, that's the thing, is he's not a financier, so he doesn't understand what it means to actually raise money for some of these big companies. This is a big deal, and it's very important, and it's worth a lot of money. According to Trump, bankers, investment bankers, hedge fund managers, and the like earn such large incomes that they should be taxed at a higher rate. Both Trump and Obama agree that by raising taxes on the wealthy, the middle class will get a tax break and therefore pay less. The problem is, here's where we get to it, is that while the middle class could pay a lower rate, there will likely be fewer people paying income taxes, while those that do pay will be earning less income. And what do we see now 2 years later? California and Missouri both suffering because the rich are getting richer slower. If we remove the instinctive emotional reaction, Marxism, socialism, Keynesianism, feels, if we remove your feels from and you apply the cold hard logic of supply and demand that many of us feel when we learn of people earning what seems like a ridiculously large income, and just look for a fair and optimum tax policy, we can arrive at a more reasonable conclusion. Our goal should be to implement a tax policy that encourages economic growth that will continuously raise the standards for all Americans while meeting the goals of raising sufficient revenue, achieving equity, creating no market distortions, and being easy to administer. And what are they going to propose? You heard it. They're going to be talking about a flat tax. Following Obama and Trump's notion of overtaxing the wealthy would lead to slower growth and less equity, actually worsening income inequality and lessening economic opportunity for all Americans. You mean that taxing the rich doesn't actually lead to more equality? Well, gosh, I'm going to tax you right now and play an ad here on YouTube. So, taxed, there you go. Actually, you know what's funny is I just created market value. By pushing this little button, I have created more wealth I have stimulated the economy more than President Obama has done in 8 years of a disastrous presidency. Adios, Mr. President, and good riddance. So, moving on, talking about that flat tax. There are 3 things that people do with their income, okay? Get this. They pay taxes, they spend it or save it, or invest it. For income earners, taxes are paid first, and then the remaining level of spending is set, right? What is left over after taxes and spending goes to saving and investments. Raising taxes on the wealthy effectively leaves their level of spending the same, making less available for them to save and invest. That in turn reduces capital available to the economy. It is the highest income earners who provide the majority of new capital for our economy. There are 2 basic inputs into the economy, capital and labor. We're getting some economics here, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go to sleep. How productive these inputs are when producing output, product, right? That's what output is, depends on a number of factors, including technology, entrepreneurship, natural resources, and human capital, generally thought of as education. Right? In today's economy, the labor force is disproportionately small since less than 63% of the adult population is currently working or willing or able to work. This figure should be in the 67% range as it generally was before the Great Recession. If you raise taxes on the wealthy, you're going to reduce capital formation. Couple that with the current low labor participation rates, add in the burdensome government regulations that stifle entrepreneurship, and we have only one technology remaining to drive economic growth. With less growth, there is less demand for labor. This lack of demand for labor keeps wages low and the number of jobs available, which are opportunities, low as well, hurting the vast majority of American workers who were supposed to benefit when the government hiked taxes on the wealthy. There is a much better solution, and this is only a few paragraphs, real quick. Then we get to the fun stuff. We talk about guns, all right? I'm just going to stimulate my economy here real quick. And enjoy that, guys. Enjoy that. All right. Oh, don't forget, we're getting to the end of the live stream. So if you have questions, YouTubers, drop them in the bottom. Libertarian Defense Atheist usually has some good stuff. Actually, real quick segue, side note, I read your blog the other day, Libertarian Defense Atheist. And I noticed that you mentioned me. You were talking about working together, some of the differences that we had on foreign policy and things like that. But I just want to say I really enjoyed your article. Well done, well written. You should write for the Libertarian Republic sometime. And another quick stimulation of economy, if you guys are just tuning in, you can get these cool taxation is theft products and libertarian shirts over at threadsofliberty.com. All right, so let's finish it up. So what kind of a tax scheme do I think, and this author, do we think would actually stimulate the economy, lead to capital accumulation, which leads to more economic spending, which leads to more job creation, which leads to more economic growth? An individual doesn't pay in terms of percentage points, okay? You pay in dollars. The better solution to our taxation dilemma is this: a single tax rate of 15% on all income above a livable minimum, which he calls twice the poverty rate, with no deductions for anything. No deductions. All income is treated the same, whether earned by wages, salaries, rent, interest, profits, dividends, or capital gains. The corporate tax rate would be 15%. And here's the thing. Corporate taxes, ladies and gentlemen, are the highest in the entire developed world. 29%. 29%. If that is not theft, it is theft. It is. Let's make taxation theft again. It definitely is theft. But yeah, we should definitely reduce that, cut that in half, cut it down to 15%. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I propose for my presidential campaign. If I ever run for office again, then I would definitely still consider doing something like that. If let's say I were a legislator of some sort and I had the ability to propose legislation, this might be the type of legislation I would propose. And this would raise more tax revenue. It would add to economic growth. It would reduce unemployment. It would increase wages. It would revive the entrepreneurial spirit. It would provide opportunities for all. And this would be fair. That's the word that liberals like to talk about. Fair. What's fair, right? Everybody pays the same rate above a certain above the poverty wage. Everybody pays the same rate for whatever they earn, just 15% across the board, so that you're not taxing income. You know, people pass cigarette taxes. I've said this before. They pass cigarette taxes as a way to deter people from smoking. So if cigarette taxes are supposed to deter people from smoking, what are income taxes supposed to deter people from doing? Pull that thug life, yo. I've got my little camera assistant over here laughing at me, think I'm a total dork. Shut up. While this plan would be economically optical, it may be politically difficult to sell to the electorate. Of course it's going to be, because it's not. You're not punishing people enough, and that's what people like. Right? The alternative is to set it to a higher rate, maybe 25%. This will have negative economic effects, but it may be the second best solution. While taxing the rich may sound good on the political trail, oh Lord, the reality is taxing the rich hurts the poor. Definitely, definitely, definitely. All right, so moving on. Let's talk about the final story that I have here. This is a little bonus story. I know I'm going long, but I know you guys love this. There's all kinds of little nerds nerding out in the live stream right now, having a good time. You guys don't want me to leave, so I'm going to go ahead and give you one last story, which I think is really cool, and this is about gun silencers. This is from Reason.com. In The Godfather, a mafioso prepping young Michael Corleone to assassinate some rivals gives him a pistol for the job. Not this one. After firing a bullet into the wall, Michael complains, "Ow, my ears!" His friend says, "Yeah, I left it noisy. That way it scares any pain-in-the-ass innocent bystanders away." Now, the Corleones would have little interest in a bill allowing gun owners to obtain silencers without the federal permits required since 1934. Some people like the deafening boom of a gunshot. Most shooters don't, and the NRA is pressing for enactment of the Hearing Protection Act. It's a great name for it, which also has the endorsement of Donald Trump, an avid Donald Trump Jr., an avid trophy hunter. Cool. Now, this proposal horrifies gun control advocates who see it as a favor to homicidal maniacs. Right. The Violence Policy Center in Washington argues that silencers pose a grave danger to public safety because they, quote, enable mass shooters and other murderers to kill a greater number of victims more efficiently. Do they realize that it does decrease some of the distance that these bullets travel? Do they know anything about guns? Why is it the people that want to legislate against guns are so ignorant when it comes to how guns work? Like, remember that guy, the legislator in California who said it had the ghost gun had a 24-round clip magazine. It fired 30 caliber magazine clips. Liberals, just please. I understand that you're terrified of everything, including your own shadow, and that you think an AR-15 sounds like a cannon, which it definitely doesn't. But please just learn about something. Learn something, before you want to legislate it. Okay, just educate yourself. Right now, getting a federal permit for the gun costs a $200 fee, and as I said in the presidential debates, no one should have to pay $200 to put a suppressor on the end of their assault rifle. And now I just triggered all the conservatives because they're going to say, it's not an assault rifle. Is this an assault shirt if I attack you with it? Actually, an assault rifle is a technical definition for a gun with a selective fire option and a detachable magazine. That is the definition of an assault rifle. Triggered! I need the air horns. That's what I need. If I could afford a producer right now, hold on, let me stimulate my economy so I can actually maybe afford a producer. Then we would have the air horns going off right there right now. The thug life, putting on the glasses, So I don't have that right now because I have to do everything myself and it's a lot of work. So anyways, you're lucky you get to watch these live streams, dang it. I'm a busy man. But yeah, now you have to pay $200 fee. You got to have an exclusive background check. You got to wait several months. Possession of a silencer without a permit is a felony that carries a 10-year prison sentence. You got to be out of your mind. I mean, I'm pretty sure that people who commit sexual assault don't get 10-year prison sentences often. Under the proposed change, silencers would reduce the noise. Silencers under the produced legislation, silencers would be treated like ordinary guns. Criminals would be ineligible since they can't pass the federal required background check for purchases. Only law-abiding adults would have legal access. The industry prefers the term suppressor because the devices don't eliminate the noise. They don't. They merely diminish it, and it doesn't even diminish it that much. Like, if you've ever watched No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem carries it. At one point, he has a shotgun with a silencer on it, and he goes, "Pshoot," like it just sounds like, like a hanger being scratched across a piece of metal. But it's still really loud. It's still very loud with silencers on them. Recreational shooters and hunters would like to have silencers because they don't want to damage their hearing, but dislike using ear protection. I do. I absolutely hate using ear protection because oftentimes when you're in the field, like if you're on a dove hunt or a quail hunt or something like that, you want to be able to hear like sounds in the bushes. Sometimes a dog will make a noise, it will point, right, and you won't be able to hear it, right? You won't, and maybe having a silencer instead of having to use the ear protection would be better. That's our choice. That should be our right as an American. That should be our freedom. I don't see anywhere in the Constitution that the federal government has the power to regulate suppressors in such a way. If they don't have the power, they shouldn't do it. And I don't think that it should fall under the necessary proper clause either, liberals. It's just a blank check for you all to regulate every aspect, every minute of our lives. But anyways, so if I were a legislator, if I were a senator or a congressman, I would definitely vote for legislation that would legalize suppressors and make it so that they would just be treated like any other gun. Not that I even necessarily believe with that, right? I'm not a big fan of background checks either, just because I don't like the idea of the feds having to decide who gets a gun and who doesn't. My father, actually, he got me a really nice gun for Christmas. Missouri has constitutional carry. He got me a nice little 380 for my concealed carry. But he can't. Every time he goes to buy a gun, he gets flagged by the ATF, and we've been wondering why, but we think we found out why. You know why? It's because he was in the military. Isn't that interesting? Think about that. The members of the military get flagged for buying guns here in the United States. So we train these soldiers to be killing machines, we train them to use these weapons, and then when they come back to the United States, if they want to try and enjoy those constitutional freedoms that they fought and bled and sometimes died for, then they have to suffer through an extra round of background checks. That's the kind of thing that the liberal Democrats love, because they think all of our soldiers are just bloodthirsty killers, and that's why Democrats get their butts handed to them to an election, because they're a bunch of liberal ninny-weeny pajama boys. Anyways, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. One last plug. If you like the products that you see right here, do me a favor, go to threadsofliberty.com after this podcast. If you're watching us later on Facebook, what are you doing? Subscribe to me on YouTube. I'm not live right now if you're watching me on Facebook. If you're watching me on YouTube, you're getting the real deal. I really appreciate you all supporting my projects. The Stonegate Institute is going to be at CPAC this year. If you're interested in volunteering, send us an email. If you want to help us to cover the cost of the booth, we just managed to cover the cost of the booth, but we still have to pay for some banners and materials and things like that. Go to stonegateinstitute.org. We'll be there at the end of February. I'm going to San Diego this weekend, guys. San Diego Libertarian Party is having a big conference. I'm going out there to talk to my fellow libertarians, and I might sneak away to Mexico across that porous border that we have. Build the wall. No, don't build the wall, because I want to go to Mexico. Come on. A wall that can be built to keep people out can also be used to keep people in. So come on. Let me go to Mexico. Anyways, I'll see you in San Diego this weekend. If you want to find out more information about where I'm doing these, if you're watching me on Facebook right now, there's an events page. Let's see. Let me think. Video right here, my left side, over here, should be down there. Events page. But if you're watching me on YouTube, you are based. You are intellectual. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. Thanks so much for watching my live streams on YouTube. You can find them at youtube.com/AugieP. I'm back Wednesday night and Thursday night. Well, Thursday I'll be in San Diego, so you might get to see me with Under the California Sun. California. Wait, we're gonna have to. I think we've got to play that. Play it out, Tupac. Here we go. You guys have a great night. Stay free. I'm going to get a copyright strike if I let that play for too long. Have a great night, guys. Peace out.